Human babies are among the most helpless infants in the entire animal kingdom, and for hundreds of thousands of years, keeping them alive was one of the greatest challenges human beings ever faced. Unlike newborn horses that can stand within hours or chimpanzees that immediately cling to their mother's fur, human infants are born almost completely defenseless. A newborn human cannot walk, feed itself, support its own head, or survive even a single night without constant protection and care. The reason for this extreme vulnerability is the human brain. Human brains are so unusually large that if babies developed as fully before birth as chimpanzees do, they would never fit through the mother's birth canal. Evolution therefore created a difficult compromise. Human babies are born physically unfinished, so their brains can continue growing outside the womb. Nearly 75% of human brain development happens after birth, while the infant remains entirely dependent on adults for survival. In the dangerous prehistoric world filled with predators such as leopards, hyenas, snakes, and harsh environmental threats, a crying human baby became an easy target. Human infants also could not cling to fur like other primates, because humans lost most of their body hair after evolving to walk upright. This forced early humans to constantly carry babies for safety and protection. A baby left alone on the ground was often a dead baby. Ancient humans survived this enormous evolutionary weakness, not because infants became easier to raise, but because human communities developed complex caregiving systems designed specifically to protect helpless children. Constant carrying, shared caregiving, physical closeness, and communal support became necessary survival strategies rather than optional parenting choices. The survival of the human species depended entirely on whether groups could successfully protect infants long enough for their unusually large brains to finish developing. Human beings did not evolve to raise children alone. One of the most important ideas in the content is that humans survived because parenting became a shared responsibility carried by entire communities rather than by isolated mothers. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy describes humans as cooperative breeders, meaning that throughout most of human history, children were raised collectively through constant support from many different caregivers. This system was completely different from the parenting style seen in chimpanzees, where mothers handle almost all infant care by themselves for years. Human babies were simply too helpless, demanding, and vulnerable for one person to manage alone in dangerous prehistoric environments. Anthropological studies among hunter-gatherer groups, such as the Fa and Aka, reveal how deeply communal human parenting originally was. Among the Fa of Central Africa, a single baby is held by an average of 14 different people during an 8-hour period. Infants are constantly passed between fathers, grandmothers, older siblings, neighbors, unrelated women, and other members of the group. Babies are rarely left alone or placed on the ground because isolation dramatically increased the risk of death from predators, exposure, or neglect. Fathers also played a much larger caregiving role than many people assume today. Studies of the Aka found that fathers remained within arm's reach of their infants for nearly half the day, helping carry, protect, and calm them continuously. Human parenting, therefore, evolved as a deeply social activity built around networks of cooperation rather than individual independence. This communal caregiving system was not simply an act of kindness or cultural tradition. It was an evolutionary necessity required for the survival of a species whose infants demanded years of constant attention, protection, feeding, and physical contact. Human survival became possible because entire groups shared the burden of keeping children alive together. Ancient humans developed several biological and behavioral systems that acted as survival technologies designed specifically to keep helpless infants alive in extremely dangerous environments. One of the most important was constant carrying. After humans evolved to walk upright, they gradually lost most of the body hair that primate babies normally cling to for safety. A chimpanzee infant can grip its mother's fur from birth, but a human baby has nothing to hold on to. This forced prehistoric mothers and caregivers to carry infants almost continuously throughout the day using slings made from animal hides and plant fibers. Carrying was not simply a form of comfort or emotional bonding. It was a direct survival strategy. Scientists call the calming effect of being carried the transport response, an ancient reflex built into the infant nervous system. When a baby is picked up and held against a caregiver's body, its heart rate slows, breathing becomes more stable, and crying suddenly stops. In prehistoric environments filled with predators such as leopards and hyenas, a quiet baby was far less likely to attract danger. Human infants today still display this same ancient survival reflex when they calm immediately after being held. Breastfeeding also became one of the most important survival systems humans ever evolved. Mothers often breastfed children for 2 to 4 years because breast milk provided sterile nutrition, hydration, immune protection, and antibodies in a world without medicine or safe drinking water. Frequent breastfeeding also naturally suppressed ovulation, delaying future pregnancies and reducing the danger of caring for multiple helpless infants at the same time. When babies became old enough to require solid food, caregivers practiced premastication by chewing meat, roots, or plants first, before transferring the softened food directly into the child's mouth. This process introduced digestive enzymes and immune support through saliva while making difficult foods safe for infants to consume. Together, carrying, breastfeeding, and premastication formed a complete survival system that allowed extraordinarily helpless human babies to survive long enough for their brains and bodies to fully develop. The content also explores one of the most fascinating ideas in human evolution, known as the grandmother hypothesis, which helps explain why human women often live for decades after menopause. In most animal species, surviving long after reproduction provides little evolutionary advantage because individuals can no longer pass on genes directly. Humans evolved differently because older women became essential to the survival of children, mothers, and entire communities. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes studied the Hadza hunter-gatherers of Tanzania and discovered that postmenopausal women were among the most productive food gatherers in the group. Grandmothers spent long hours digging tough tubers from hard ground, collecting food, and helping feed grandchildren who were too young to gather resources themselves. This support allowed younger mothers to recover more quickly after childbirth and safely care for additional children. As a result, children in groups with active grandmothers had significantly higher chances of survival. The content argues that menopause is not a biological failure or useless stage of life, but a successful evolutionary strategy that strengthened human communities for hundreds of thousands of years. Human longevity exists partly because older adults improved the survival of future generations through knowledge, labor, childcare, and food sharing. Grandmothers were not the only helpers either. Fathers, older siblings, aunts, uncles, and unrelated members of the tribe all contributed protection, emotional support, caregiving, and physical labor that made raising children possible. Human parenting evolved as a cooperative social system supported by many generations working together. The survival of prehistoric infants depended not only on mothers, but on entire networks of experienced adults sharing resources and responsibility. In many ways, the long human lifespan itself may exist because communities that protected and valued older caregivers were more successful at keeping children alive. Modern parenting often feels exhausting, lonely, and emotionally overwhelming because human beings were never evolutionarily designed to raise children alone. For roughly 300,000 years, parenting was always a deeply communal activity supported by entire groups rather than isolated individuals. Ancient humans lived in tightly connected communities where relatives, grandparents, siblings, neighbors, fathers, and unrelated caregivers constantly shared the responsibility of protecting and raising children together. Babies were rarely alone. They were continuously held, watched, carried, fed, comforted, and protected by many different people throughout the day. The physical and emotional burden of childcare was distributed across an entire network of caregivers, allowing parents to rest, recover, gather food, and survive in dangerous environments. Modern industrialized societies changed this system dramatically. Today, many parents raise children with help from only one partner, and in some cases almost entirely alone inside isolated homes or apartments far removed from extended family and community support. The content argues that the exhaustion many modern parents experience is not personal weakness or failure, but the result of trying to perform a task human evolution never prepared individuals to handle alone. Human infants evolved expecting constant physical contact, multiple caregivers, and communal protection, while adults evolved expecting shared responsibility and social support during child-rearing. Ancient parenting systems reduced stress because no single person carried the entire burden continuously. In contrast, modern parenting often isolates caregivers physically and emotionally while still demanding constant attention and labor. The content suggests that many feelings of burnout, loneliness, sleep deprivation, and emotional strain come from living in a social structure completely different from the one humans evolved within for hundreds of thousands of years. In the end, human children survived because entire communities cared enough to help keep them alive together, and modern humans may still psychologically need far more communal support than modern society usually provides.